described to colleagues in England a land still dominated by Lenapes despite the settlements of Swedes and Finns along the river, the Dutch-English town of Newcastle, and Quaker villages of Middletown and Shrewsbury near the Atlantic shore. The hospitality of Lenapes saved Fox and his companions from sleeping under the open sky in terrain they considered a wilderness. The Quaker leader distinguished between the settlements of Lenapes, who treated him lovingly, and the wild woods, full of bogs and rivers to cross, recognizing the Lenapes' authority while appreciating their kindness. He spoke several times to the natives about religion, but reported no success in convincing them to Quakerism. They rejected his spiritual authority, as he depended on them for food, direction, and shelter. The Quaker missionaries proceeded to visit friends in New England, returning to Lenape country in September 1672, when they again traveled safely through the region by respecting the Lenapes' power and following their rules. This time, with Lenape guides, they took the more usual route across New Jersey from Manhattan to Mantinicum, now Burlington Island, moving steadily from point to point through many Indian towns and rivers and bogs. They traveled through territory the Lenapes protected carefully against European settlement or passage without guides. Indeed, one night the party found an old house which the Indians had forced the people to desert. The Quakers learned later of several Lenape murders of Europeans in the area the previous year. The travelers safely crossed the Lenape Wichitac once again with the help of hired Lenapes and their canoes, then rode 30 miles south, and came at night to a Swede's house and got a little straw and lay there all night. With another guide, they proceeded to Newcastle, where government officials offered lodging and space so that the missionaries could hold a Quaker meeting before departing for Maryland. The Lenapes' firm grip on South and Central New Jersey is clear in a map from 1670 created by a merchant named Augustine Herman, who had settled in New Amsterdam in 1644 and then established his plantation, Bohemia Manor, on the Maryland eastern shore in 1661. Herman labeled the country from the Lenape Wichitac to the Atlantic Ocean as, at present, inhabited only or most by Indians, and he drew Lenape towns adjacent to many rivers and streams emptying into the Lenape Wichitac and the sea. Various Lenape people populated the territory as illustrated in the map, including the Cohances, Mantes, and Amawamsey, who had sold some of their lands to Europeans but retained much of New Jersey as their own. It was through this territory that, with the natives' guidance and permission, Fox's party had crossed. Notwithstanding its acknowledgment of the natives' continued presence and power in the region, Fox's report to English friends about his journey through Lenape country helped to establish the mythology that the early Delaware Valley was a wilderness inhabited by generally friendly Indians and some scattered colonists. From his few weeks in the region, Fox described a segmented society with Lenape towns entirely separate from Swedish, Dutch, and English villages. In this short time he learned little about the society the Lenapes, Swedes, Finns, and other Europeans had built together since European arrival, and he thus gave the impression to William Penn and other friends in England that the Lenapes domain was ripe for Quaker colonization. Fox's narrative has given impetus to the legend that the Delaware Valley was a blank slate on which Penn and the Quakers first brought peace and justice to the Lenapes. For the Quaker founders of Pennsylvania, their descendants of the mid-18th century, and historians in subsequent centuries, Delaware Valley history began in 1681 when Penn received his charter from Charles II. In creating and perpetuating this founding myth, colonists and scholars have credited Penn with efforts to form an open, tolerant society that dealt honestly and amicably with the Lenapes and other natives. He pledged to pay a fair price for their land, and to avoid the bloodshed that destroyed native and European settlements elsewhere in eastern North America.